Good evening and welcome to the Park and Recreational Advisory Board for Monday, June 9th, 2025. The City of Gladstone is abiding by guidelines set forth in House Bill 2560, which requires the governing body of the public body to extend reasonable possible to make all meetings accessible remotely through technological means and provide opportunity for members of the general public to remotely submit oral and written testimony during meetings to extent in-person oral and written testimony is allowed. Therefore, this meeting will be open to the public both in person and virtually using the Zoom platform. Kristen, can you call the roll, please?
Kate Cornelius.
Here.
Kim Agramson.
Here.
Eric Butler.
Here.
Nancy Turner.
Present.
Bruce Hildreth.
Here.
Justice Mills.
Here.
We have the approval of the May 12th, 2025 meeting minutes. Did anyone see anything that they were concerned about, or do our minutes stand?
I think the minutes stand, and I'd like to make a motion to accept them the way they're written. This is Justice Mills.
Do we have a second?
Eric Butler, second. Great work as usual, Kristen.
Kristen, can you call the roll, please?
I will. Kate Cornelius. Yes. Kim Agramson.
Yes.
Eric Butler.
Yes.
Nancy Turner.
Yes.
Bruce Hildreth.
Yes.
Justice Mills.
Yes.
Okay, and next on our agenda is business from the staff. Silas?
Yes, thank you. This is Silas Richardson, Public Works, City of Gladstone. As far as parks maintenance update, we are busy in the season. Most of our highlights for May are captured in the staff report. Some of the things to note, we've done some needed repairs, safety-wise for ball fields, painting some picnic tables. The spray park is up and running. We were able to get it running a week ahead of our normal scheduled. And we were just busy in the parks taking care of everyday ins and outs and other requests that come in. But if you refer to the staff report, there's some good pictures and some bullet points and highlights. Also, High Rocks, we have the seasonal garbage cans out actually in the park itself down by the river, and they're chained down. But we're working on some other things with High Rocks as well. So that's it in a nutshell for the maintenance update. I'll move on to the next agenda item, which is kind of an update on the paved loop trail project at the Gladstone Nature Park. I don't know if all of you have the printout of the design. If you look at the map itself, there's a dashed red line that is representative of where a future reservoir could go at some point. But right now, we're designing the trail to sort of snake its way, for lack of a better term, into that perimeter. The only big changes that have happened thus far is instead of the trail going over to the, if you could scroll up or down just a little bit, Kristen, instead of the trail going over to the existing parking lot,
Give me a second.
it's going to go straight through to the existing paved trail that's there, if you can imagine that. So instead of it going from a right on the upper part of the map, it's going to go straight down to the existing.
It's not showing that. Sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's backwards.
Oh, is that upside down?
No, it's not upside down. I just think you're not seeing the whole right side of the map.
This side, right?
So if you go to the bottom and just kind of scroll over, there you go. And now scroll up. You can see where it ties into the existing parking. Instead of that piece, we've made the decision to go straight on. And that's going to get it closer to potentially where the picnic shelter and restrooms will go. And it will save some cost on the build. I will say that there's a meeting tomorrow. So Pat Sissel, the engineer, and consultant will meet to talk a little bit about where the design is and some things that they just want to discuss up front with FOGNAP and different members. So I'm going to try to make it to that meeting, but I'm kind of double booked, so I'm not sure if I'll make it. But this is the design so far. Don't really have any rough costs as of yet, but if we get into engineering costs and we think that it's going to kind of be a little too much, there is a secondary contention to possibly use the small spur trail that you see right there, kind of in the mid, yes, right there. Thank you, Kristen. That could potentially become the second part of the loop, rather than going all the way down to where it is right now. And if you see all the little black dots, those represent elevation points that they actually surveyed to get the topography to make sure that they were able to make different grades and successfully complete the trail. But it's a pretty good, if you walk it, I mean, the trails they're all existing. They're just in a form of maybe chips right now instead of pavement. But we tried to utilize as much of existing trails that were there, and I think it'll turn out really nicely. So that's kind of where it's at. Still in design, and we're working towards it.
Okay, great. All right. So the next phase on that would be,
Finalize the design and start making some bid documents and try to get it out to bid.
okay, all right.
Yeah, that's what we're working towards.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Next on the agenda is update on the Max Patterson Reservation Pilot Project. Kristen and I haven't heard much feedback. Employees on this side of the things, I'll say, stationed in the Civic Center City Hall are taking care of most of that. I think so far the only big issue has been that when people apply for a date, they're not able to easily access the existing calendar. So there's a little bit of crossover, and we're working through that technicality. We're hoping that it's an easy solution. So right now you might apply for a day thinking you had a time slot, but somebody already reserved that and you weren't able to see it on a calendar unless you were able to navigate. So it's a little bit of a hiccup, but so far I think it's been going well. But those are the only complaints that we've heard, that they think they've got it reserved, but it was reserved prior and they weren't able to see the calendar. So we're working through that. But again, this is a pilot. We're kind of stretching our wings here and learning as we go. So hopefully, once we're done, we'll be able to work those out. Any questions? Yeah.
Yes, this is Justice Mills. I live right up by the park, and I went past there yesterday on my bike, and looked like people were doing what they're supposed to be doing. But this morning when I walked past there was excess trash. It looked like it was bagged and everything, but is there something on the contract that you know of? I didn't even look at the contract for that to see if, hey, you can fill up the trash bins as much as possible, but not leave trash bags on the ground where they can be accessed by ravens, crows, animals, that type of thing. I wondered if there was something like that on there.
Yes.
Okay.
You're supposed to remove your trash, from what I know, but
Okay.
unfortunately, there's an element of people out there that just bag it up and leave it where it is. So, yeah.
No, we still love the 10%. Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah. But it was a busy weekend, I'm sure, and there was a lot of trash that was generated this weekend. Yes, Bruce.
Silas is Bruce. The signage, I haven't looked, but do the signs coordinate with the pilot project? I mean,
I believe they do.
okay,
They're
good.
still up. I haven't been out there in a while, but I believe they're still up.
Okay.
All the older signs have been removed,
The
from what
older
I know.
That's what I was wondering, if the older signs were.
But yeah, they're still up.
Great. Okay, thanks.
Yep. Anything else? We'll move on to the next agenda item. So since we installed the last memorial bench, we've had 2 applications, 2 new submissions, and they are part of the packet, which is great. So we're working through that. The applications have been submitted. We're working with the people that have submitted to get a memorial bench in place for a loved one. I think the challenge that we'll be working through is just finding different spaces for those memorial benches, but we're looking forward to working through those, and it's nice to see that we've got the applications. So just wanted to bring that to your attention. And finally, kind of recapping the request from our last meeting about the discussion on vandalism, number of hours spent over the last year. We were able to tabulate some data. Took a little bit of time, but Kristen has it, and she'll pull it up here. So there you go. I can't really see it from here, but can we make it bigger? Can you guys see that on your screens?
Sure why it didn't go bigger.
There you go. Look at that. So obviously this is the last year from May 2025. So January 2024 to May 2025, each month, the total hours that we spend accumulated over that month. So looks like the wintertime there's still some, but it definitely seems to ramp up as we hit spring and summer. And then we see a decrease again down to November and back up. But I don't know if we have an average, but it's in the teens, I would say. If you did an average, it'd probably be around 10 or 11, maybe a little more than that. So
Probably around 16.
yeah, I mean, June 2024, that's that's almost a full week of somebody doing nothing but vandalism. And that's a lot, 42 hours in August of 2024. So we're hopeful that those numbers will come down. Yeah, please.
So I think the one thing to pay attention to is that this is specific on our daily reports for graffiti damage, so locks being broken, stuff like that. There's plenty of other hours where there's trash being dumped in the parks or, other forms of vandalism. So, huge murals being painted on bulkheads down at the river and stuff that aren't really accounted for here. So while these hours are specific, they're specific to removal of graffiti and painting of parks and stuff like that, to cover it up. So.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions?
So you're pondering that. I mean, there's probably a lot of questions, but I don't know if there's
Sure.
answers for it. But
Well, the data's there. Like I said, it seems to trend up and down, and it looks like it's trending back up. We're hopeful that it won't be as much this year, but I will say that crews are very diligent, and when they get calls or they see something, they take care of it within 24 hours, which I think is a really good policy. 48 at the most if it's a weekend, but that's the deterrent, right?
yeah,
If somebody wants to do this kind of activity and then they see that we're back fixing it as soon as possible, hopefully those people will move on to somewhere else or find something better to do with their time. That's our hopes.
yeah, I agree with you on that. Yeah.
I know in the winter, like down at Cross Park, one of the bathrooms usually is closed
Yeah.
for the winter. Are the other bathrooms in other parks the same?
Well, that's a discussion that may need to happen. I mean, I think Gladstone's policy is to have restrooms available
For-
year round. But one might be closed just for seasonal reasons, or it could have issues. There have been times where we've closed it for extended amount of times for repairs. But yeah, I think most restrooms are open year round.
Okay. Do you have a sense of some parks being hit harder than others?
I think since I've been here, Max Patterson seems to be one that's hit quite a bit. And then Cross, usually the restroom. And that's more, it seems like the Cross parks, that's more of the damage to the door or a lock or something along that lines. But Max Patterson seems to get a lot of graffiti in areas.
In the bathroom?
Yeah, usually the bathroom. But again, Nancy, I think what you're alluding to is if we were to think about shutting down more bathrooms, it might decrease some of the vandalism.
Or it might increase it.
Or it might increase.
I don't know. Sometimes people go the other direction. I was just curious.
Sure.
Because I know sometimes Cross is shut down, but I'm always curious whether there's been vandalism in the other one. So while that's being fixed, it's just shut, or
Right.
I didn't know what the reason was.
I think you're probably onto something there. It's probably the case.
I'm clever sometimes. Okay. All right. Does anybody else on the board have questions?
So given the fact that you might be able to identify a particular area, maybe a little more hotspot, maybe the bathrooms, is technology at a point where could you put a camera up? Then you might start to see who's doing it. Maybe it's 2 or 3 people that are doing it.
It's a thought.
Yeah, I mean, if it's one of those things where you
Right.
can bring them to the podium and say, here you go. It's against city ordinance, right? There's a crime being committed.
Sure.
And it's probably juveniles, but they do, juveniles at some point have to atone or they're going to turn into criminals, hardcore.
That's a great segue because our next topic is to go through questions that everybody came up with, unless Eric, you have something about the vandalism.
Thank you.
This is Eric. I had a thought along those lines too. I wonder if kind of a Portland Loo style design would be less inviting to vandalism, as it's a little less enclosed. It's got just that slight bit less privacy.
Great.
This is Kate. I'm not sure I've ever seen a Portland Loo though that I would want to have to use. I
This
don't
is
know that
true.
they're usually not in great shape either.
Okay. Any other questions for Silas before? I do have one question. You mentioned that going back to the High Rocks. You mentioned that the garbage cans were down there and they were chained down because otherwise they become floaters in the river. And then you said we're working on some other things, and I was hoping you would expand a little bit on that.
We just had a lot of inquiries on the dumpster at the bridge and adding garbage cans or getting rid of that and adding a garbage can. And there's also been some thoughts about recycling. So it's being tossed around. We're talking about it.
Is that through the community requests, or is it
Yes.
something within Public Works, or?
It's community requests.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Were we not going to have someone talk about that? Anyway, it's okay. All right.
Here.
I think one of the people that was really interested, back to the vandalism hours. I know that Ian was very curious about it, and I'm wondering if there's a way we can share with him. I don't know why
What?
he's not here,
I
but
think we could probably either email this.
or did he?
So no, he did not reach out, but everything that we show is always updated onto the packet
Okay. Afterwards?
afterwards.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
and then
All right.
it's reposted,
There
so
you go.
anybody would have access to it.
Okay, great. All right. Any other questions from what Silas has told us about for clarification? Okay, then. Our next is our discussion with our police chief, and we really thank you. This is a huge ask for you to give up this extra time. And I think you were given some questions that we generated.
Yes, I have them in front of me.
Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, I'm kind of would like to know how you guys want to go. I can read my responses, or you can get it on the record by someone just asking me the questions, or I can just read the question and respond to it.
I have some of the questions.
Do you want me to read out the questions and then you can
We can
respond
do
to it?
That's totally
Does
fine.
that work?
Perfect.
All right, so question number 1. What are the roles and responsibilities of the Oregon Patrol in our city? Have you found their services to be beneficial, and how are these patrols being used?
Well, there's 3 questions all in one. So we got 14, but what are the roles of the responsibilities of Oregon Patrol? They're ambassadors for the parks. That's what we have them there for. They are a visible security deterrent by patrolling parks. That's what they're there for. They get out and talk to people. They will provide information to people. They will enforce the no drinking and violations. They will call us if they need to call us for enforcement action. But that's what they do, and they're out on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. So they're on the weekends, which is important to me, especially during the evening hours where they're a force multiplier for our officers who are out there. Have I found their services beneficial? I absolutely have. And they cover, I specifically changed direction this year. They were covering all the parks. I restricted them now down to 4 parks where our patrol officers randomly patrol the other parks because there's not a lot of high activity in the other parks. And the 4 parks are Derrick's Park, where they go after hours, especially get people in and out of the dugouts. We got a lot of complaints about needles being in there. We've made several arrests in there. We've made our presence known there, and we continue to do so. And work with Public Works and or the apartment complex, which we use some different strategies with the apartment complex, which is right next door. We seem to have a lot of high volume calls there, and those have since been reduced based on our strategies we've employed. With regards to the other parks are Max Patterson, Meldrum Bar, and High Rocks. And we have specific strategies for each of those parks with those Oregon Patrol and our patrol personnel. With that, even though they're in the evening, our patrol officers obviously respond to randomly patrol all the parks. Specifically, we target these 4 parks more than others, especially during the day. So does our code enforcement, our community services officer, and our patrol. So you'll often even see me down at Meldrum Bar or High Rocks, just looking around and patrolling and seeing what's going on. We do take enforcement action when we see things, but more importantly, we tend to hear things secondhand if something's going on down there, either through the code line or just randomly I'll see something on social media. But we never receive phone calls of violations. We don't get the dispatch calls. Sometimes we do. We pulled a couple of people that were heavily intoxicated, had to help them out and help them to another location, who've been drinking in the park. But we've got strategies now to set a tone for both Meldrum Bar and High Rocks coming up, if that makes sense. So we don't get a lot of calls, but what we do find, we find on our own or we get flagged down as we're in the park. So my encouragement to people is call the non-emergency number. If you see a violation, see people drinking, you see a violation or have concerns about safety, we will respond, but we need to know about it first. I think I answered that and plus another question, but we can go.
Yeah, I think you answered the next question as well. All right. Is there an overview of the types of complaints that come in from the parks?
Typically, we get a lot of people in crisis. A lot of people in crisis. That's basically our majority of our call load out there right now. And they're either committing crimes due to their moments in crisis or other things. So a lot of it has to do with narcotics in their system and or just someone in crisis. We do get some drinking every once in a while. High Rocks is a prime example. Mostly on the weekends or on hot afternoons and evenings. Even though the park closes at 10, AMR is pulling out. We have hired an extra Oregon Patrol officer to specifically stay at High Rocks, especially during the hot weather. And we make that determination depending on the day, depending on the weather. And they're there typically from 6 to 10 as a deterrent. And so far, that's a strategy we employed last year at the end when we were receiving a lot of criminal activity, whether it's fighting, whether it's pulling guns out, shots fired, or threats of stabbing, or whatever it may be. And what we find is it's not Gladstonians up there doing this behavior, it's people coming in from the outside. And so it's very, very difficult. 3 years ago, we had a shooting out there. And we tracked everybody at Southeast Portland and made arrests out of Southeast Portland based on those incidents. So that's a draw for people more outside of Gladstone. I get it's popular, but it's very, very difficult to police, especially when you're down there in the rocks. So, but those outside of that, the vandalism, I'm trying to get back types of complaints of vandalism in the parks like Max Patterson. Or another one that's typically what we're finding is it's inside the bathrooms, and you can't put cameras in the bathroom. So, sure, does technology work? It absolutely does. Would it help? Sure. Would it help us identify people? Possibly. but then we have to prove it, right? And so we can capture people going in and out. So when we get before a court of law, we have to have more than 51%. We have to have beyond a reasonable doubt, right? And so that's where we struggle. That's where, yeah, we know you did it, but maybe we can't prove it in a court of law because we're not getting you to admit to it. Or you don't have the spray paint or whatever it is all over your body and holding the can, right? So not to say that we can't and won't, but there's times when there's nowhere we can go with it. But that's something that, that we've talked about in our staff meetings about what are some options for us? Where can we put cameras that wouldn't violate anybody's civil rights as they're going in? Because you don't want to put it where you can see inside, right? You just have to get people coming and going. And then how does that camera system work? Do we have the systems in place? Do we have enough, the network that will allow that much video footage? Does that make sense? So we have to look at a lot of different things when we talk about putting technology up. And I'll tell you what, I'm huge on technology, especially for the police department. We do extremely well with the minimum staffing that we have just based on technology. Technology is a force multiplier for us, so I'm not afraid to use it. Next, did I answer that question?
Yeah, and I think I'm going to go ahead and skip that next one too, because it kind of rolls into that. You have a big picture of law enforcement concerns in Gladstone. What are your top priorities? Where does vandalism in general and specifically in the parks rate on your priorities?
Yeah, that was an interesting question because community safety and public safety is our priority. That's what we're here for. If we see an event, we see a crime, we see an offense, we're going to deal with it. Our prosecutors will prosecute it. If we make an arrest, our prosecutor prosecutes, unless she says that we did it wrong, which is not that often, or we're missing something, or she can't prove something. But vandalism, any type of behavior that's unwanted in Gladstone, we're going to enforce. We're going to enforce. So, but we have to be there to get it. Now, with that, when you talk about what's a priority of parks, parks are a priority to us because that's where people go. That's where people gather. If I probably drive by Max Patterson and Meldrum Bar 5 times a day. Now, that's just me. If I'm out and about, if I'm not in meetings or doing something, I'm always out looking at the kids or driving by the schools. And our patrol officers do the same thing, but we can't be everywhere. That's why it's so important that if somebody sees something, call dispatch so we can respond. We have to be able to track these also. Sometimes people will wait for 2-3 days and come to the front desk and say, hey, I saw this 3 days ago at Max Patterson. And it's like, well, okay, we'll keep an eye out for it. But it's helpful if we talk to people to curb that behavior right away. Let's see, what didn't I answer on that?
I think you got everything. But do you guys have a question?
Yeah.
There was one, and I guess it has to do with what supports would be most beneficial for enforcement within the parks. Is there something that the Parks Board can recommend or things that you would like to see, structure or policy or something in the parks that would help enforcement? And I just saw your, like, what?
Yeah, no, I'm trying to understand, and I'm trying to think of an ordinance or a law that we don't have, and we have all the tools we need. We just got to be able to catch them.
Okay, so in other words, I know we've talked about trying to get some signage in the parks that said, if you see it, if it's maintenance, call this number. If it's in code enforcement, call this number. Would that?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if those signs work. I've not researched those. If you want to advertise for an emergency or violations, contact non-emergency dispatch. If you want to do something for code violations, we already have something set up for the code line, right? Or in fact, our code enforcement responds to dispatch calls. So that would be the same thing.
I guess sometimes in light of the person who said, oh, I saw this happen 3 days at Patterson. If
Sure.
you don't have that number right in front of you, it's like, oh, I'll call it when I get home or I'll look it up. And then 3 days goes by and something. So I didn't know. Anyway, I know other parks in other cities use that.
And that would be a Parks Board decision, but would it be helpful? Possibly.
Okay.
All right, next question. How do our current rates of vandalism compare to past and seasonal rates in your experience?
I finished my 6th year here, and that graph that you saw is typically the way it goes. Kids are out of school. I agree with Mr. Hildreth. Yes, I believe it is juveniles. But they're very difficult to catch when they're behind closed doors in a bathroom at the same time. What we have done and what we've done already is put out park rules. The one time when the bathrooms were getting hit almost every other day after they're cleaned up, we put a bunch of stuff out in social media, and it seemed like the community took care of the issue because it really slowed it down. And we'll continue to do the same thing. We'll put blast out if we're seeing a pattern of restrooms. And I know the restroom, I mean, you can consider, as frequently as Max Patterson's restroom is a pattern, we'll continue to put stuff out, but we're talking every other day. If Public Works is out there cleaning it up, we get pictures, and then they clean it up, 2 days go by, it's again, we'll start blasting things out. Typically, the community takes care of it because we just can't put somebody up there. We don't have the staffing to put somebody up there 24/7, or at least when the bathrooms are open. Because I believe they lock at like at 10 o'clock. So.
All right. Would the PD see value in having a park ranger position that could assist with patrolling parks at peak park times? As we know, park rangers are not sworn, cost less, perhaps working a few hours a week. Could help educate and enforce park rules and could call police when needed for a response.
And I think that's what we have Oregon Patrol for. That's what they're currently out there doing. That's their responsibility. And we communicate, just so you know, we communicate with them daily when they're out. They check in with us. They're CJIS compliant with us so they can come into our building and we brief. We'll meet with them out there. Like today, I just talked with the AMR supervisor out at High Rocks a little bit and getting a feel for what's going on out there, especially with this hotter weather from their perspective. So I think Oregon Patrol, I'm very, very satisfied with Oregon Patrol. And I think the quality of people they continue to hire has increased. So it makes me a little bit more secure.
So Chief, I've got a question about that. I've seen the Oregon Patrol. I honestly didn't know what they were doing. I didn't know if they were patrolling a community. I mean, some high-end communities, which we don't have a lot of here in Gladstone. You have that kind of a patrol going through it. And I honestly didn't know it was attached to Gladstone. So I guess my question is, do other people in this community know that? Has that been in the newsletter?
I want to say we put them out there in the newsletter. They were here long before I got here.
Okay.
So they've been
Jeez.
over 6 years.
Yeah.
The Oregon Patrol has been here. But what I do have them doing this year is I have them put placards on their cars, say Park Patrol. And so I want people to recognize our Gladstone Park Patrol. I haven't seen the cars. I haven't seen the magnet on it yet.
Right.
But did you see one over the weekend?
I did.
Okay. And I wanted them, so when they're in our parks, I want people to know that someone's there watching.
That's where I saw them. I was at Nature Park, and they were in the lot there,
Okay.
and actually out of the car and having a conversation with another person. But would that be so if I was walking through and there was a group of people sitting at the picnic table and they're smoking and drinking and having a good time, but you're not supposed to do that.
Right.
And there's the Oregon Patrol.
I'd go over and tell them. They are armed security.
Okay. Yeah, I thought they had guns.
Yeah, no, they're armed. And a lot of them are former police officers, so.
Okay. Yeah, I think that should be in the newsletter a little bit more often during the summer months here.
Okay.
You know? And the see something, say something is a good way to go.
Jim Akerson here, just briefly. It's the Oregon Patrol. Is that a statewide organization or is that more local?
It's more local. So there's a couple different organizations out there. There's one group called Portland Patrol, which I know is in Portland. They're the downtown people that walk in the private security, but they're also flushed out into Washington County a little bit. And I know the city of Hillsborough uses them. And I only know that because they were there when I worked there. But Oregon patrols more Clackamas County, and I think they branched off into different areas, but they're extremely responsive and a great partner for us.
Great news. Thank you.
This is Eric. So they're a private contractor.
Yes, they are. And we budget for them yearly.
All right. This may or may, I mean, it's kind of along with this last question, but you may have more information on it if you want. If a park ranger position is not in the cards, would PD be willing to explore the possibility of freeing up some of our community service officers' time to function as a park ranger?
Yeah, I'm not willing to do that. I can't free up our community services officer, especially in the summertime with the tall weeds and grass and the multiple complaints we get. It would be impossible. Something would have to give.
Okay. What do patrols look like in our parks? How often, which officers, compliance, community, et cetera?
I think our patrols happen daily, and it just depends on who's on shift. So I can't tell you which officer, but I can tell you the officers go through their daily. So it's random patrols, it's call dependent, and then call response if needed. So if there's an event or a lot of people in the park, they tend to pay a little bit extra attention to it, just like I do. So when I'm out there.
How would law enforcement respond to a complaint from a park user in a dispute over a reserved picnic shelter?
Yeah, this is an interesting conversation because immediately I said, I'm not going to be the picnic police. And we're not going to get involved. It's a no-win for us. We're not going to arrest somebody, cite somebody, or get involved in that. That process is going to have to flush itself out, and then people are going to have to be compliant. At least that's our stance right now and moving forward. So unless something changes, unless there's a need. Now, if something gets out of control, disorderly, potentially violent, yes, then we're going to step in and deal with it. But if it's just, it's my time versus my time, you're going to have to check with the city on that. That makes sense? Anybody have any concerns on that? Because that was a big thing. I mean, we just went through multiple years of, pulling back authority from law enforcement, but I don't want to get involved in the picnic stuff.
So this is Bruce, and I don't blame you at all. Everybody up here, I think, said so, John. But maybe for the city, as long as we're talking about this, if there does become an issue and it maybe doesn't go violent, but now it's everybody's upset, maybe a penalty would be that you don't have the privilege to set up a reservation, I guess, for the rest of the summer or something like that.
Yeah, that could be.
I mean, there should be probably something there. If someone gets huffy and says, no, I was here, so beat it. And somebody goes, well, I made a reservation, then probably there should be some sort of a little penalty for, I don't know, something to consider.
I'll let Haley know that.
Yeah.
We're bouncing back to vandalism, and I think you've kind of answered this. So if you deem it necessary to pass, that's good. With so much vandalism in the park, is there any prosecution or follow-up by law enforcement to hold vandals accountable and deter future incidents?
So I will answer this question because I want to be perfectly clear that if we can prove somebody did something, or even if we can get enough to arrest on probable cause, we will do so. And then we'll continue to follow up and work the case or convict the case. But either way, if we can prove something, there's going to be consequences, and we're just not going to walk away.
The Public Works Department also works with the juvenile DA to work with the kids to either do community service and or recover costs for, we actually bill out the costs and they have to pay it back. So between both departments, I think we have a pretty good system in place.
This is Justice Mills. I have a question. What is the highest prosecution for vandalism before it exceeds like a Class A misdemeanor?
Actually, it could be a felony, Class C felony, depending on the dollar price.
Good enough for me. Thank you very much, Chief.
When law enforcement responds to issues in our parks, what are the issues they're seeing? Recent examples of park-related situations.
Again, we'll talk about people in crisis. We'll talk about vandalism. We'll talk about probably drinking. Not as much. In most cases, people are very, very compliant, and we make them pour their beer out. Or Oregon Patrol will. If we see them, depending on, the situation, we can make them pour them out. But in most cases, we'll drop a cite on them. So, and that's a good reminder. And in those cases, and I talked about earlier setting the tone. We're already planning missions for a couple of the parks. So we're going to set the tone early on in the season. We're going to have zero tolerance, high enforcement, and then see where that takes us. So if you do get complaints, why are so many cops in the park doing these things? That's what we're doing.
And lastly, how can the Parks Board best support your department?
I think by sharing, I think Nancy Turner sends me emails and tells me what problems going on in the park, and I think that's helpful because sometimes I don't even know. And
I think it's the other Nancy,
oh,
Nancy Eichstead, but that's.
Nancy.
You
Okay,
can
I'm
give
sorry.
me credit if you want to.
Okay,
but-
I'll give Nancy Turner credit. But I do get emails
Right.
regarding the parks and problems in the parks. The more we know, the better off we are. And that's what's important. So if you see something, say something. And I'm sorry, Nancy.
Okay, it's happened before.
But I think that's it. I think we have the tools we need. We just got to be able to do the job. And what's important for everybody to understand, our strategies on patrol, I get this all the time, and I shouldn't be saying this, but I'm going to. I get this all the time. People think we have 10 to 15 cops out there at any one time. But our patrol strategies, the way we run them, the way we operate, that's the illusion we want to give. Because a lot of times we have 2 to 3. Unless we're in the evening hours and we're stacked with overlapping officers based on the time of day and the days that give us, 4 to 5. And then when we have Oregon Patrol out there, they're just force multipliers. So we want to give it an illusion. We want to hit the neighborhoods, just not the parks at the same time. So that's what's important. A sense of security for people to go out and enjoy the parks, enjoy their neighborhoods, go on walks. That's our priority. I do not want people to feel unsafe walking around Gladstone. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Chief, I could thank you for that. Absolutely. It's just one of those things in our neighborhood. We get a lot of people walking, and I think it's a sense of safety. They feel it. So it's great. And I love it when somebody on what is it, next door says, geez, what was all the cop action? They were all over the place, And,
Yeah.
there must have been 4 or 5 cops, It's a good illusion if that's, but I know you're doing the best you can. Thank you.
Yeah, so, and that's what's important, but I'm not the only chief that does it. I'd like to say that I created this and invented this, but no. I mean, every city, every jurisdiction has staffing limits, and it can only put out so many officers, so.
Any other questions? Well, thank you so much. I think especially the Oregon Patrol part was really helpful to know. I did all of a sudden seem like there were more of them. I've been in the parks. There's certain parks I'm in more than others, but definitely I was over in the Safeway's parking lot waiting for someone to get some ice, and there was a lot of patrol activity, and they were very visible and very present. And so I saw several people, instead of going down to High Rocks, they went over the bridge to the Oregon City side.
Yes.
So I don't know if that's the new pattern.
Unfortunately, but they all park on our side, so they have to come back.
I know. Yeah. And I was wondering how, yeah.
And that's typical where we find our problems. Not necessarily down there, although there's drinking that goes on there that carries on up onto the street, and that's where we have most of our problems. It's not necessarily down on the rocks itself.
Yeah. I was watching that dynamic, so thank you. I appreciate your time.
You bet.
Yeah. I'm still talking. Um, Okay, moving on to business from the board. We did get, and thank you for attaching, to Haley in particular. Thank you for attaching the results from the Nick Shannon, survey. That was really, interesting to read. And we've had like well over like 200 responses, which I think is really wonderful too. So, did everybody get a chance to kind of review that in the packet? Thank you. Anybody have thoughts or?
This is Kate. My first thought was just reading those, how many people simply thanked us for even considering their opinion.
Right.
And I know we've had discussions about this in the past about making sure that we do that outreach and are proactively asking people what they want in parks. And I was just so excited to see all of these comments and how many people took the time to respond and also just acknowledged, they were just happy to even be asked. So to me, this looks like a big success. I thought we'd maybe get a few responses, but this is like overwhelmingly great, and I think gives us a really, really good place to start.
This is Eric. Just a minor note, but I was very amused by all the back and forth on the sand, especially given that that's a settled matter.
Yeah. I had two questions though. Is there a water fountain at Nick Shannon? Okay, so that was some other
There's no
part.
water there.
No.
Okay, that's well, only standing water, not water from a fountain.
Yeah.
Okay, and then there was some repetitive stuff about a wasp issue in the sand around the slide. I didn't know if that had been brought to,
We'll take a look at it.
yeah, I mean, that would catch my attention.
That seems like a now issue. Yeah, multiple times it mentions wasps that have possibly nested in and around the slide. So
We haven't
That
received any calls. Sorry to interrupt, but we'll make a work order and check it tomorrow.
Thank you, thank you. So anybody else have some thoughts? I did want to mention that Ian has arrived. So we're talking about Nick Shannon and the results. Okay. Okay,
Oh, you were.
okay. Any other thoughts or questions or observations?
I just saw about 6 areas, this is Bruce, 6 areas of what people would like to see in the park that had real high scores.
Mhm.
Swings, play structure, the nature play area that I think we've bounced around that some parks should have that. And then all abilities access area there, I guess. And then the plantings, that's the one that kind of drew my attention. The 2 types of plantings, native plantings, and then the plantings that would attract pollinators. And I think that almost could be one item, but they both had high marks. And then the other one that I thought was kind of unique. I'm not a big basketball player, but just a hoop with a little concrete pad. It's probably something like a half court pad or something like that. And some of the comments were, gee, you don't find those too often. But yeah, so anyway, I like to say there's about 6 of them that just had high marks.
Yeah. Yeah, I also noticed, again, there's always things that are in most parks, some sort of spinning device that you can
Mhm.
spin yourself silly and some sort of climbing something. So, those were kind of the themes that I saw. I was really impressed with the number of people that really liked the nature play area. I think it would be a really nice addition. There were a couple people who said, don't just make it like every other play structure. We have those in Gladstone. They were kind of, so that might be into that. So I'm not sure how we go about getting more information on that, on how those are created, because that type of a play structure would lend itself to that piece of property with the trees. I love the adding art to cover up the water towers. I thought that was an awesome, some sort of art back there. And I thought maybe we could just open it up to graffiti tagging. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, and accessibility.
That's it. Just to note that those aren't Gladstone's
I know.
towers, but
And I think people were really confused about that. Like they wanted a Frisbee golf thing in and amongst the water towers. And I thought, That's an awesome plan, but I'm not so sure that Oak Lodge Water is going to let them do that. So, yeah. Anyway,
This is Kate again. I will once again put out there the suggestion that whatever we put in is more accessible. And I know what we worked on at Meldrum had a couple, let's be real, very, very tiny accessibility features to it that did not really make the whole play structure accessible. And we have people asking for that in this feedback and specifically even saying, hey, this doesn't exist in Gladstone. We don't have anything like this. So as we look at designs, I think that's something we should ask for in the design of whatever the play structure looks like.
This is Ian, and if we want to go the nature park at all, has someone who spent a lot of time at Westmoreland. The downside of using all natural materials is they have a lifespan of about 10 years. And they've had to replace multiple parts of that park already since they put it in. And Nick Shannon has lasted, what, 30, 40 years currently. And they also often require a bigger footprint than I think we have at Nick Shannon if we have to stay in the existing footprint in terms of like the amount of stuff you can fit in, because logs are big. That's something to consider for the future.
This is Bruce again, and Ian mentioned the footprint. I know we have, if you're looking at it, we have the left side of the road, that service road that goes back to the Oak Lodge Water Towers. And the right side belongs to Oak Grove, is my understanding.
Oak Lodge,
Uh,
Oak Lodge Water.
Or Oak Lodge Water. Yeah, sorry, not Oak Grove. But I believe Gladstone has leased that property, for a low sum of, I'll just call it $1 a year, in the past. And I don't know, personally, the status of that. Is that something that we could find out? Because that would be a perfect spot for the natural play area.
This is Nancy, and there was an agreement years ago, and I have a copy of it somewhere here, where Gladstone could use the right side as a dog park. And they had to fence it, they had to maintain it with dog waste and a garbage can. But I am absolutely not sure that it actually got up before the neighbors put up a stink.
Well, it got up, but it was taken down pretty quickly.
Yeah, so if we can definitely ask the city to look into that and make sure that that agreement still is okay in place, but we would have to do some real major outreach to that neighborhood, very tight neighborhood, before we went to the expense of putting up fence only to take it down again. Because dog parks were definitely asked several times. That was a high priority that I saw in the responses. So,
Yeah.
I mean, we can,
This is Ian. I live near there, and that's what people use it for anyway. That's
yeah,
that's
yeah.
what-
And I would rather the dogs be over in the dog park than over in the play structure. So,
I don't believe that agreement is actually still active.
active. So
Mhm.
it's something we could, but I think we as a Parks Board would, or would the Parks Board be responsible for that since it's not a park?
We can have Tammy look into it, but I
Yep.
think the agreement, as far as I know, is no longer active
Oh,
due
okay.
to all of the dog park stuff. So, but we can find out when Tammy gets back and then maybe bring that back to you guys.
Okay, so that might be an option. But I'm not sure since it's not really a Gladstone Park. But anyway, we can work all that out and have that information come back to us. So we had talked about leaving this survey up until the end of June, and we're 20 days shy of that, so we can leave it up a little bit longer. And people, before we ask Silas we can start narrowing down, like even in our own minds, about what we would like on our design requests and maybe come back with those, or how do we want to proceed as a team?
I'm sorry if this has already been covered. What is our next step once the survey finishes?
I think at that point, then we have dollars set aside for this through the city. So I think the next step then is to get a couple of designs made. And we would need to be specific about what we're looking for within that design. And then it would come back to the Parks Board and we would talk about it, ask for changes or improvements, and then put it out to the community for their input. So at some point there would be community input, but I think it needs to come back to the Parks Board for that first yay or nay. Am I correct?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So at this point, we get to say, do we want to just say, okay, we've had 230 some responses. Do we have enough? And call it now? Or do we want to just leave it out there to the end of June and see if more comes in?
I will answer that. This is Bruce.
Okay.
My opinion only, but since we already said, let's keep it out till June. Why don't we see what we get for responses and if we can add the numbers in,
Mhm.
and if it changes anything for our next meeting, and then I think at our next meeting, we start to decide what looks good and what doesn't.
Right.
That sound fair?
Kim Agerson, yeah, I agree. I posted the notice of the survey on our HOA website and told them it would be through the end of June.
Okay.
So
All right. Cool.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if the signs that are all over town are for next, Shannon, if they say through the end of June,
They don't have a date on it. It's just, they're just up
Yeah.
and we'll take them down once.
once we're done.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And whoever did that, thank you. Was that you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Because they're all over town. I think that's been really wonderful. And I think that's where we've got some responses that covered other parks, but most of them.
I will say our perks crew put them out. I just made them.
Okay, good. All right. Okay, so, and I really would encourage you, if you haven't been up to the park, to go up there and just kind of walk around in it, because it's kind of a tight little park. But I think there's some opportunity to actually do some of the things that people are requesting. So if people could get that between now and the end of the month, that would be really awesome.
And then, so because it is a tight park, I think it would be really helpful for us to know whether we can use the
Mhm.
right side or not. So I know people took notes there, but can we definitely know whether?
Yeah, I'll ask Tammy when she gets back and,
But that would only be a dog park.
Not necessarily, but
Well,
the nature park over there, or the natural play structure, maybe.
um,
That's what I meant. I'm
the
saying,
original agreement was it had to be something that could be easily removed. So therefore it couldn't be a play structure.
well, I don't know. 'Cause the natural stuff that comes and goes pretty
Well, I think one of those big logs.
giant logs, yeah.
Yeah. And they do have plastic nature looking parks, which are really tacky. Anyway. So let's get some clarity on
Yeah.
what that was and if that's even something that we want to open the door on again. But I think that would be confined to a dog park. And then the playground park would be on our property for liability and everything else.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, did Oak Lodge ever get their building completed up there?
No, they haven't. I don't really think they've started,
Okay.
but all plans are submitted and it's in the future.
Okay, all right. Because that little dirt road in the summer always makes me a little concerned with kids. So the concept of a fence along that might be
Sure. I don't think there'd be too much activity other than maintenance people coming and going.
yeah,
So
normally. Okay, all right. Next on our discussion is Meldrum Bar. When I put out for questions from the group, are we okay here?
that was her.
Okay, a little power surge there.
Making sure that was not me.
Okay. I got several questions back from some of the group on Meldrum, coming up again with some questions about Meldrum. And I told Silas, it's kind of like, what do you do about Meldrum? It continues to kind of be a hot spot. So I think it's important for us, and I think sometimes our questions indicate that we really haven't looked at the site plan recently and really are familiar with the site plan. In the city of Gladstone, we have the overall master plan for the parks, and then a couple of the parks have what is called a site plan that's very specific just to them. The nature park has one, Meldrum has one. I think those are the two that do. And future improvements in that park are based on that site plan. So, I think we as a park board need to be very familiar with what the Meldrum Bar site plan does and what it looks like as we move forward with recommending improvements down at that park. So I know some of us were here when that site plan was presented, maybe a couple of us, others, most of us were not. So I think for me, what I would like is for all of us, you can access that online. And Kristen has offered to send out that link, but you should be able to find it on the website. What I find hard is the little tiny diagram of the park isn't really easy to blow up on your iPad or your phone. So it is available through Public Works to come in and see a bigger copy of that if you need to see that. I think it's really important that we all be, and then if need be, at the next meeting, come up with your questions, like why was that thought? You know, how does all this work? And we can bring that up and discuss it as a group as to why that's happening like that, why it isn't. But that's what's going to lead us as a board to what do we do at Meldrum now? Where do we go? Where do we want to start looking for money? Because dog parks keep coming up. There's one in the site plan for down at Meldrum. It's that pesky, where do we get money? But so I'm not sure how other people feel about that.
This is Ian. I think it's a good idea for us to all be on the same page because it's a big park. There's a lot of stuff going on down there.
Yeah. Anybody else? I'm trying to remember. I think only 2 of us were on when the site plan came up. So the rest of you have come on after.
We reviewed it when I first started, when Kim and I first started on the board. We all reviewed it. We went through and talked about what the future kind of major changes were. We just haven't, as far as I remember, gone back because we haven't had the money to actually talk about doing anything about those things. But we did had a pretty good review a couple years ago, but now it's been a couple years.
And this is Bruce. And so what Kate is saying, there were 2 items that I think this group were asked to approve. One was location of the dog park, and that was approved by this group already. The only reason it hasn't happened is because it was money that was going to come through maybe a grant that didn't happen. There was a group that was going to do it. They backed out. So as far as I'm concerned, that one's still it's alive because we were asked to make a decision on it. The other thing we were asked to make a decision on was the play structure. Yes. And that was redone. There was grant money that came in on that. So that was, I guess, what we might call a slam dunk. We did the design, as y'all recall. I know Kate, Kim, you were on. I don't know. Eric, were you? Maybe you weren't on.
I don't think so.
I don't think
Yeah.
there were the decisions made, but it was things there when it got built.
Yeah. So that's the other thing that we were asked as a group to comment on. So those are the only 2 things on the site plan that have had any movement.
Well, I think we also need to remember that the metro funds that we have that are driving the bathroom and the shelter at the nature park, that's the first big project out of that huge pot of money, but there's going to be money left over. And I think we have kind of earmarked it to go to Meldrum. But it has to be used in a certain way. It's not something we can use for play structure. We can't use it for ballparks. I'm not sure if a dog park fits into that. I think there's been some question on that. But there is a whole lot of other improvement that can happen at Meldrum that would fit into that metro funding. And if we have, and we will have extra funds after the nature park is finished, there should be extra funds and perhaps we can combine that with some other. But so I just want people, because I keep getting the same types of questions like, so I just want to make sure that we're all clear on that the site plan drives what we're doing down there. So, and I think you had one other question here about the fire department training.
Oh, because I was going to bring that up. So, yeah, Bruce Hildreth again. So, yeah, one of my questions was that we were asked by the Gladstone Fire Department if they could put a training center in there, and this is at least 6, 7 years ago, I think, and it was agreed. The chief of police at the time, I cannot remember his name, and they put in a training center there. And this is when Mike Funk was still, I think, the fire marshal. They used it, and they told us that when they were done using it, it would go away. And some of it has gone away, but some of it is still there. We might call it an attractive nuisance, but at this point in time, with our, I don't think we have a fire department that's actually utilizing this, we'll call it equipment, but it's a barbed wire fence that's surrounding big chunks of pipe. And I don't know why those are still there. And I've asked about it. Nobody has a good answer. So I'm asking.
I don't have a good answer either, Bruce, but I will look into it and get back to you in the next meeting.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
This is Justice Mills. I saw in the newsletter and other things that we're merging with Clackamas Fire, which has a big training center out here in Clackamas anyway, and they go to other places. So I don't know that it would be, who would do it might be the big thing, but they have all that training facility out there, and then they go to other training facilities in the area, which would involve Gladstone in that when they needed to do training. So that stuff could probably be removed, and thank you for looking into that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes. I hope the same. We'll have more answers here soon.
All right. Okay. I think another thing, did anybody else want to talk? I'm talking too much tonight. I think the other thing is the sources for funding, and we can come up with a list on what our little pockets of money are that fit at Meldrum, so that we can start looking at some of the projects down there, because that seems to be the next park that really needs some attention. And kind of look at how we want to proceed with Meldrum. So, all right. Any other business from the board that I'm not aware of? Okay. All right. Moving ahead to business from the audience.
Yes, we have one speaker, Melanie Throckmorton, so I'm going to promote her to a panelist, and I'll start her time for her once she's up here.
And she is going to talk to us about a citizen
Olson Wetlands.
wetland.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, she should pop up here. And once she does, hopefully. Oh, there we go.
Hi.
Hi, Melanie. I'm going to start your time. And once you see the 3 minutes here starting, can you see the timer?
No, I can't.
Okay, hold on one second. Let me reshare it. That's super big. Oh dear. What happened here? I don't want that one. Hold on. Well, let's see here. Now I lost my timer. Hold on one second, Melanie. I'm gonna start a timer that you can actually audibly hear, because it's not working to see it. All right, you may start.
All right. Hello, my name is Melanie Throckmorton, and I live here in Gladstone. I'd like to tell you about an amazing opportunity to improve our town. Metro is currently offering limited time nature in the neighborhood community choice grants. These grants are for parks and nature projects that connect people to nature close to home, improve fish and wildlife habitat, and make our region better able to handle flooding, hot summers, and wildfires. This spring, Metro conducted a series of idea-generating workshops. Community members posted their ideas to Metro's website. This autumn, people in the project area will be able to vote for their favorite ideas. Each voter will be able to rank 10 choices online. Metro's team will develop the winning projects. A final vote on the projects will occur in spring of 2026. My idea is titled Green Space at Olson Wetlands, and my proposal is as follows. Vacant lots currently serve as upland habitat for Olson Wetlands. To preserve and improve this green space, Metro shall acquire lots next to the city of Gladstone's Olson property. Improvements to this green space will include removing trash and replacing invasive species with natives. This project will enhance wildlife habitat and public safety. It will not create a publicly accessible natural area, but will allow regulated volunteer and educational activities. My project is in alignment with Gladstone's love of nature. This love is demonstrated by our support for the Gladstone Nature Park and our approval of Gladstone Charter Section 42. In 2017, community input resulted in prevention of development on the vacant lots. My proposal would help the property owners harness the value of their assets while conserving the green space. Neighbors in the area strongly support this. Neighbors also support public ownership to improve community safety. Currently, off-site private ownership of lots prevents speedy response to public safety incidents. Please explore the Metro Community Choice website and share this opportunity with your network. Please include my project when you vote with Metro this autumn. And please include the possibility of my project in Gladstone Parks and Recreation Advisory Board planning. We already pay into Metro. Let's get a great value reinvestment. Thank you for your consideration.
To Metro.
Thank you,
Yes.
Melanie.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
No, you're okay.
I'm sorry, I'm stuck between a couple of things here. Before can we let the board ask her questions for clarity?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Are you open for a couple of questions, Melanie, if someone has them?
Oh, I'll do my best.
Okay, and we'll keep it brief. So, does anybody on the board have a question? Or update?
I may not have been listening so well, but I was listening pretty good. But if I want to look at more of that information, do we have that information?
We do,
We do.
we do, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Metro
apologize.
came out and actually did a Saturday at the Gladstone Library,
Ah,
and they're doing it around the community, and people are coming and putting out. And yes, we can get you that link so you can go on
Okay.
there and look. I think the due date for having those projects turned in was like the 6th of June.
I believe it's Eric, I believe they extended it to the end of the month.
Oh, okay. So there still is some time. Okay, all right.
cool.
Thank you
Yeah,
for
thank you.
coming and sharing that, and good luck.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Okay, all right. So anything else from anybody in the room? No? Okay. Our next meeting is July 14th, same time, same place. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
My mic's open. This is Bruce. I move to adjourn the meeting.
This is Justice Mills. I second that motion.
Kristen, would you call the roll?
Sure. Kate Cornelius.
Yes.
Kim Agrimson.
Yes.
Eric Butler.
Yes.
Nancy Turner.
Yes.
Bruce Hildreth.
Yes.
Justice Mills.
Yes.
Ian Moore.
Yes.
Meeting adjourned.